In the early 1960s, a young neuroscientist named Michael Gazzaniga was sitting across from a man who had just had his brain cut in half. Not a metaphor, a surgical procedure. The corpus callosum, the thick cable of 200 million nerve fibers connecting the brain's left and right hemispheres, had been severed completely. The surgery was a last resort for severe epilepsy. It stopped the seizures. It also created two separate brains inside one skull. The patient seemed fine. He talked normally, walked normally, cracked jokes. If you met him at a dinner party, you would notice nothing. The strangeness only showed up in the lab. Gazzaniga was working at Caltech under Roger Sperry, who had pioneered the procedure. They had devised a simple test. Flash an image to only one eye, which sends it to only one hemisphere, and see what happens. When they flashed a picture to the right visual field, which connects to the left hemisphere, the patient could say what he saw. No problem. That's an apple. That's a house. When they flashed a picture to the left visual field, which connects to the right hemisphere, the patient said he saw nothing. But his left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, could reach out and pick up the correct object from a table. His mouth said he saw nothing. His hand picked up exactly the right thing. Two brains, one saying, "I see nothing," the other quietly reaching for what it saw. This would have been strange enough. Then it got stranger. Gazzaniga flashed a chicken claw to the patient's left hemisphere and a snow scene to the right hemisphere, simultaneously. He asked the patient to point to related pictures from an array in front of him. The right hand pointed to a chicken. Correct. Chicken claw, chicken. The left hand pointed to a snow shovel. Also correct. Snow scene, shovel. Then Gazzaniga asked the patient why he pointed to those two things. The patient looked down at his hands. Without hesitation, he said, "The chicken claw goes with the chicken, and you need a shovel to clean out the chicken shed." His left hemisphere had no idea about the snow scene. It never saw it. That information was locked inside the right hemisphere, which can't speak. But the left hemisphere didn't say, "I don't know." It invented an explanation, instantly, confidently. A story that was completely wrong, but perfectly logical. Gazzaniga had just watched the brain lie to itself, in real time. He called it the interpreter. The left hemisphere's job, he realized, is not to perceive the world accurately. Its job is to tell a story that makes sense. It takes whatever information it has, incomplete, contradictory, missing pieces, and assembles a narrative, immediately, without hesitation, without knowing what it doesn't know. The interpreter never says, "I don't know." It never pauses. It never admits there are gaps. It fills them, every time. In another experiment, Gazzaniga flashed the word "walk" to the right hemisphere of a split brain patient. The patient stood up and started walking. Gazzaniga asked why. "I wanted to get a Coke." He didn't want a Coke. His right hemisphere had read "walk," and his body responded. His left hemisphere watched the body move and built a reason on the spot. A reason that felt true. A reason he believed completely. A reason that was entirely fabricated. That is your left hemisphere. That is what it does all day, to you. In the early days after surgery, some patients experienced something even more unsettling. Their hands fought each other. One hand would button a shirt. The other would unbutton it. One hand would reach for a book. The other would slap it away. One patient reported that his left hand grabbed his wife and shook her violently. His right hand reached over and pulled the left hand off. Two wills, two intentions, in the same body, neither one aware of the other. Doctors called it alien hand syndrome. The hand had a mind of its own. Or more accurately, it had the other mind. Roger Sperry won the Nobel Prize in 1981 for this work. His contribution was proving that the two hemispheres are specialized. Left hemisphere: language, logic, linear thinking. Right hemisphere: spatial awareness, pattern recognition, emotion. But Gazzaniga's contribution may be the more disturbing one. He didn't just show that the brain has two halves. He showed that one half is a storyteller. And the story it tells is not about truth. It's about coherence. Your left hemisphere would rather give you a wrong answer that makes sense than a right answer that doesn't. It would rather lie to you smoothly than tell you the truth with gaps. This is not a disorder. This is the default. In split-brain patients, you can see it because the two halves are disconnected. The fabrication is exposed. The seams are visible. In your brain, the corpus callosum is intact. The information flows freely. The interpreter has access to everything. So the story it tells is smoother, more convincing, harder to catch. But it's still a story. Richard Nisbett and Timothy Wilson demonstrated this in 1977. They hung 4 identical pairs of stockings on a rack and asked people to choose which pair was the highest quality. People overwhelmingly chose the pair on the far right. When asked why, they gave confident answers about the fabric, the knit, the texture. The stockings were identical. There was no difference. People had a position bias. They favored the rightmost option, and their interpreter built an explanation around it without ever knowing the real cause. They were split-brain patients with intact brains. On December 10, 1996, a 37-year-old neuroanatomist named Jill Bolte Taylor woke up with a blood vessel exploding in her left hemisphere. She was having a massive stroke. As a brain scientist at Harvard, she was in a unique position to observe what was happening. Her left hemisphere went quiet. The language centers shut down. The inner narrator, the interpreter, went silent. What she experienced was not terror. It was peace. She lost the boundary between her body and the room, lost the sense of where she ended and the world began. Lost the running monologue, the planning, the analyzing, the self-criticism, the story. She later described it as euphoria, a feeling of being at one with everything. It took her 8 years to fully recover. She wrote a book called My Stroke of Insight. She gave one of the most watched TED Talks in history. The split-brain patients lost their unity, and it was disturbing. Jill Bolte Taylor lost her narrator and called it the most beautiful experience of her life. Same brain, same division. Opposite reaction. Which raises a question nobody in Gazzaniga's lab was prepared for. If the left hemisphere is the interpreter, the narrator, the storyteller, the one that says, I, and the right hemisphere is something else entirely, wordless, present, spatial, emotional, then which one is you? The one that speaks, or the one that reaches for the shovel and can't explain why? The split-brain patients suggest the answer might be both, and neither. And the feeling that you are one unified person making conscious decisions might be the interpreter's greatest trick. Gazzaniga himself wrote about this. He said the interpreter is not a flaw. It is what makes us human. The ability to build a narrative from chaos, to create meaning from noise, to feel like a single self in a brain made of competing systems. That is the achievement. But it's also the illusion. You have never experienced a moment without the interpreter running. You have never had a thought that wasn't filtered through it. You have never made a decision and known, truly known, whether you made it or the interpreter just told you a good story about why your hand was already moving. Gazzaniga put it simply. The interpreter doesn't tell you what happened. It tells you what makes sense. And you believe it. Every time. Because it is the only voice in the room. Or at least, the only one that can talk.